Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to this online session of Accounting Standard 29. Now, if you read the heading of Accounting Standard 29, it says provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So, one standard is covering 3 points: one is provisions, one is contingent liabilities, and the other is contingent assets. Now, as we always begin the accounting standard by understanding why this accounting standard was introduced. So please understand that carefully. If you understand that carefully, I think understanding the entire standard becomes very simple. ES 29 was created because the Accounting Standard Board felt that the prudence concept is being misused somewhere or the other. So the prudence concept tells you that provide for all the expenses and losses, but please do not anticipate the gains. Which means that if I feel that I will have an expense or a loss of 10,000, I must provide it today. So when I provide the loss of 10,000 today, I have a good opportunity to reduce my net profit today. So people used to use this as a tool for manipulating books of accounts. They used to create something known as secret reserve. Now please understand what is a secret reserve. Suppose I handle the cash of PSP, and Pushpendra sir tells me that whatever expense you make, you will have to record it. Now, I am telling Pushpendra sir that I will issue some material to the November 20 batch, which will cost approximately 6,000 rupees. Now, actually, I am not going to issue any material. It is a fake expenditure that I am doing. I will write in the book 6,000 rupees expenditure for material for November batch. I will not actually pay to the supplier because I'm not buying any material. Instead, that 6,000 will go in my pocket. That amount that goes into my pocket is known as a secret reserve. So what companies used to do is they used to show fake expenditure, they used to show wrong provisions, and then that amount they used to keep aside in the form of a secret reserve. Now, the Accounting Standard Board really wanted to stop this secret reserve because they cannot cut down on the prudence concept. The prudence concept is a primary concept that we have in accounts, and because that concept is primary and important, it is very difficult to cut down that concept. So, what the Accounting Standard Board decided was let's make a standard on how someone will make a provision in the books of accounts, and then for the first time they introduced Accounting Standard 29, which says provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. Now, let's begin with the third point, which is contingent asset. The word contingent means, as you've studied in the 11th standard, something about which you're not sure, something which may happen or something which may not happen. Now, understand contingent asset means it's a revenue that you anticipate, but you're not sure. That revenue may happen or it may not happen, which in technical terms is known as that contingent asset is a possible asset. They use the word possible asset. You're not sure. You may have that revenue, you may not have that revenue. Now, as we follow the prudence concept, you cannot anticipate your gains. In India, accounting standards do not allow you to record contingent assets in the books of accounts. लेकिन अगर आपका बहुत मन कर रहा है नहीं हमको रिकॉर्ड करना है, then you can show that in the director's report. So the first point, contingent asset means it is a possible asset, an asset which you're not sure about. You may receive, you may not receive. So that contingent asset cannot be recorded in the books. Why? Because we follow the prudence concept. This contingent asset cannot be recorded in the books of accounts. You can only record it in the director's report. Fine, come to the next one, which is contingent liability. Again, the word contingent remains the same, which means it is a possible liability. It may happen, it may not happen. Now, a possible liability should arise. Understand this carefully. You'll be able to understand it better when we go to the text. It says contingent liability is a possible liability. So, because it uses the word possible liability, you're not sure whether it will happen or it will not happen. This possible liability is relating to some event which is not in the control of the enterprise. So it should not be in the control of the enterprise. If it is in the control of the enterprise, then there is no question of contingency. Then, since it is in the control of the enterprise themselves can control it and make sure that the event does not happen. However, since it is not completely in the hands of the enterprise, we call it a contingent liability. Contingency means something which you are not sure, something which is not in your control. You're not sure whether it will happen or not. Contingent liability, as again you have studied in the 11th standard, we always record contingent liability in the notes to accounts. So first point that we studied is contingent assets, which says a possible asset, the outcome of which is uncertain. So you're not sure whether you will receive or not. Now, since we follow the prudence concept, we will never record contingent assets in the books of accounts. If you wish to record it, you will record it at only one place, and that is your director's report. On the other hand, you have contingent liabilities. Again, the nature of the contingency is same. You are unsure whether you will receive it or not. That is why you will record it in the notes to accounts. Contingent liability will always be recorded in the notes to accounts. Now, the important point is the first one, which is provisions. Now, provision you will have to understand in sync with the contingent liability. Now, provision means it is a possible outcome. It is a probable outcome. Means you're 50% sure that you will be receiving, you will have to pay money in the future. Now, whenever the possibility of any contingency is more than 50%, understand this carefully, pay attention. If the possibility of any outcome is more than 50%, then you will record it as a provision. If the possibility is less than 50%, or even if it is 50%, you will record it as a contingent liability. For example, let's take this example. Say, for example, a court case is going on me. I ask the lawyer, what is the chances that I will win? The lawyer says there are 60% chances that you will win, which means if there are 60% chances that I will win, which means there are 40% chances that I will lose. Now ask yourself, when will you have to pay compensation, when you win or when you lose? Of course, when you lose, you will have to pay. The possibility of losing in my example is only 40%. Since 40% is less than 50% that has been decided, this is not a provision, this is a contingent liability. Contingent liability cannot be recorded on the face of the financial statements. Contingent liability will be recorded where? It will be recorded in the notes to accounts. Are you understanding? Again, I'm repeating it for you. There is a court case that is going on me. I ask the lawyer, what is my possibility of winning? The lawyer says, your possibility of winning is 60%. I ask myself, when will I have to pay? I will pay not when I win, I will pay when I lose. What is the possibility of my losing? 40%. This 40% is less than 50%. In that case, I will not record it as a provision. I will record it as a contingent liability, which will be recorded where? In the notes to accounts. Right? I hope you're understanding it. Okay, if you have any concerns, if you feel I'm going fast, if there are any issues, you have a chat box. Please mention it over there and I will take care of it. Come to the other example. I go to my lawyer and I ask him that, sir, a case is going on me. What do you think? What is my possibility of winning? The lawyer says there are 40% chances that you will win the case. In that case, I will ask myself, when will I have to pay? Will I pay when I win or lose? So I will pay when I lose. What is my possibility of losing? 60%. Is that exceeding 50%? Yes, 60% is greater than 50%. In that case, I will record a provision in the books. I cannot record a contingent liability. Since I'm recording a provision in the books, this will be recorded on the face of the profit and loss account. Right? I hope you all are with me and you are understanding. So again, the first three things that I can see from the heading is contingent asset, since it is a possible asset, and since we follow the prudence concept, you cannot record contingent assets in the books. You will have to record contingent assets in the director's report. Second, contingent liability. Again, it is a possible liability. You're not sure. You're unsure of the same. Contingent liability will always be recorded in the notes to accounts. Third, provision. When will you record a provision in the books? When the possibility of any outcome is more than 50%, which means if the possibility is 50% or less than 50%, you will record it as a contingent liability to be recorded in the notes to accounts. Right. Now, with that, come to AS 29. The heading is Provisions, Contingent Liabilities, and Contingent Assets. Look at the first point, provisions. It is a liability. Underline the word liability. So, what is provision? Provision is nothing but a liability. Put a slash after liability. What is provision? It is a liability. Which liability? Which can be measured only by using a substantial degree of estimation. Underline the word substantial degree of estimation. So provision is something which you cannot measure with precision. Itna hi hoga. Take an example for bad debt reserve. Now, bad debt reserve is also a provision. If I record 5% bad debt reserve, can I by confidence say कि इस बार 5% लोग ही bad debt होंगे? You cannot say that with confidence because this is an estimation that you make. You think कि शायद 5% लोग मुझे पैसे नहीं देंगे, बाद में लॉस हो, इससे अच्छा मैं वो प्रोविजन आज ही अपनी बुक्स में कर लेता हूँ. Which means that this provision is based on some amount of estimation. It is not exactly sure whether you will have 5% only. You may have 0%, you may have 10% also. That is why they say it can be measured only by using a substantial degree of estimation. By the way, one more interesting thing. Because this provision is always uncertain, which means it may change with time. If you understand the basic concepts of accounts, a provision is always treated with prospective effect, which means it is considered as a change in accounting estimate and not a change in accounting policy. Because a change in provision is a change in accounting estimate, we always treat it prospectively and not retrospectively. Fine. Again, the first sentence says provision is nothing but a liability which can be measured only by using a substantial degree of estimation. Next point, mark that very important. A provision should be recognized, underline, only if. So you will recognize a provision only if the following three conditions are satisfied. So there should be three conditions to be satisfied. Only then you will be able to record that record that provision in the books of accounts. Now understand what are these three conditions and why these three conditions were recorded, or they are important to record a provision. A provision should be recognized only if the following three conditions are satisfied. First condition, an enterprise has a present obligation due to a past event. Very important, underline present obligation due to a past event. हम पे लायबिलिटी कब है? आज. प्रेजेंट ऑब्लिगेशन. क्यों? क्योंकि हमने पास्ट में कोई इवेंट किया था, इसलिए हमारे ऊपर आज एक ऑब्लिगेशन है. For example, if I sell a mobile phone to you and I tell you that this mobile phone is under 1 year warranty, if there is any problem in the handset within 1 year, please bring it to our service center. We will repair it or we will service it free of cost to you. Now, if I sell the mobile phone to you today on 28th of March 2020, which means till 28th of March 2021, I am liable to provide to you service. In between, if there is any problem, there is a present obligation on me to give you free service. Why? Because of a past event. What is the past event? That I sold the phone to you on warranty. Are you understanding? Again, the first point says there has to be a present obligation due to a past event. What is the meaning of a present obligation? I have to provide free service to you today. Why do I have to provide free service to you today? Because of a past event that I promised to you that I will give you free service whenever there is any problem in the mobile handset that I've sold to you. So first condition says there should be a present obligation due to a past event. Second, very important sentence. It is probable. Underline the word probable. That we'll have to understand in detail. Underline the word probable. It is probable. Put a slash after probable. What is probable? That there shall be, underline, outflow of resources. हमारी organization से resources बाहर जाने चाहिए. Now please understand they've used the word resources. Resources include men, resources include labor, resources include money. So resources includes everything. Second condition, it is what? It is probable. What is probable? That there shall be outflow of resources. हमारी organization से resources बाहर जाने चाहिए. Organization से resources बाहर कैसे जाएंगे? मान लीजिए आप मोबाइल फोन हमारे पास रिपेयर करने को ले आए मैं तो रिपेयर करता नहीं हूँ, मेरा टेक्निकल बंदा रिपेयर करता है। अब मैं आपको फ्री सर्विस दे रहा हूँ, टेक्निकल बंदा मुझे फ्री सर्विस नहीं दे रहा, मुझे तो टेक्निकल बंदे को उसकी फीस देनी है, विच मीन्स देर इज आउटफ्लो ऑफ रिसोर्सेज फ्रॉम माई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन embodying economic benefits. Underline the word economic benefits. The settlement has to be in terms of economic benefits required to settle the obligation. Again, second point, it is probable. What is probable? That there shall be outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से इकोनॉमिक रिसोर्सेज बाहर जाने चाहिए वो ऑब्लिगेशन को सेटल करने के लिए। अगर इकोनॉमिक रिसोर्सेज बाहर नहीं जाते, which means second condition is not satisfied, which means you cannot record a provision in the books. Right? Let's take two examples to explain to you in a clear with clarity. Example number one: I sell a product to you. I give you the bill, and the bill says 2 years warranty, which means if there is any problem, please bring the product to us. We will repair it for you free of cost. If we cannot repair it for you, we will replace the product for you free of cost. After 1.5 years, someone comes with that product to me and says कि ये प्रोडक्ट खराब हो गया है, ये हमारा इनवॉइस है, 2 साल का वारंटी था, आप हमको फ्री में प्रोडक्ट ठीक करके दो। मैंने उनको बोला प्रोडक्ट फ्री में ठीक तो नहीं हो सकता, मैं आपको रिप्लेस करके देता हूँ। मैंने आपका पुराना प्रोडक्ट लिया, आपका बिल चेक किया, सामने आपको नया प्रोडक्ट रिप्लेस करके दिया। Is there outflow of resources? Yes. Some resources, my stock, my resources are going out of my business. Why are they going out of my business? To settle an obligation, to settle a promise. Which promise? That I made to you in the past. Because there is a present obligation due to a past event. And there is outflow of resources to settle the obligation. Are you understanding? Second example, which will give you further clarity. I sell a product to you all and I tell you 1 year warranty. कोई भी प्रॉब्लम हो तो मैं आपको प्रोडक्ट तो रिप्लेस नहीं करके दे पाऊंगा, रिपेयर तो बिल्कुल नहीं करके दे पाऊंगा। अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि प्रोडक्ट मैंने आपको ठीक नहीं दिया और 1 साल के अंदर उसमें प्रॉब्लम हुआ, तो आप आना और आप मुझे मारना, या फिर मैं आपके घर आके झाड़ू पोता कर लूंगा, आपको घर क्लीन करके दूंगा। इज देयर आउटफ्लो ऑफ रिसोर्सेज? नॉट एट ऑल. In the second example, there is no outflow of economic resources. Right? I'm telling you, please come and you can hit me if you feel my product is not good. That is not outflow of resources. Because there is no outflow of economic resources to settle the obligation, second condition is not fulfilled. You cannot record a provision in the books. Are you understanding? Again, what's your first condition? A provision should be recognized only if the following three conditions are satisfied. The first one says there is a present obligation due to a past event. Second condition, it is probable that there shall be outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. And the third one, the reliable estimate can be made of the amount of obligation of you. Of course, if you do not have the amount of obligation, what provision will you create in the books? What is the amount that you will record in the P&L? So it is very important that you have the amount of provision. So the amount of provision can be estimated with reasonable certainty. So your three conditions to recognize provision are: first one, very important, there should be present obligation due to a past event. Second, it is probable that there shall be outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. All these three sentences are absolutely clear and easy. The problem lies in the word probable. Let's understand what is the meaning of the word probable. Probable means probability of, very, very important, underline, more than 50%. That is more likely than unlikely. So if the possibility of any event is more than 50%, say for example 55%, मतलब इवेंट होगा 55%, इवेंट नहीं होगा 45%, इवेंट होने के चांसेस ज्यादा है, which means it is more likely than unlikely. Underline that also. More likely than unlikely means इवेंट होगा उसकी पॉसिबिलिटी ज्यादा है, नहीं होगा उसकी पॉसिबिलिटी कम है, which in clear terms means that the probability is more than 50%. Because the probability is more than 50%, चांसेस है कि पॉसिबिलिटी होगी और नहीं होगी उसकी पॉसिबिलिटी कम है. Right. Again, very important statement. I'm repeating it for you. Three important conditions to recognize a provision. First one, there is a present obligation due to a past event. It is probable that there shall be outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation, and a reliable estimate can be made of the amount of obligation. What is the meaning of probable? Probable means that the probability should be more than 50%. Fine. Come to the next one. It is not necessary that a provision should be recognized only on having a legal and contractual obligation. जरूरी नहीं है कि आपके और हमारे बीच में कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हो तो ही प्रोविजन आएगा. It may even arise from a normal business practice. Say, for example, I have set a trend in my organization that on every Diwali, I will give bonus to my employees. There is no contract between me and my employees कि मुझे बोनस देना पड़ेगा और उनको बोनस मिलना चाहिए. ऐसा कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हमारे बीच में नहीं है. लेकिन मैंने ऐसी प्रैक्टिस रखी है कि हर दिवाली पे बोनस मैं तो उनको दूंगा. Now, because I am giving them bonus on every Diwali, it also means that it is my regular business practice and I need to create a provision for that Diwali bonus. No one can ask me आपके बीच में contract दिखाओ कहाँ लिखा हुआ है कि बोनस देना है. There is no necessity that it has to be out of a contractual obligation. It can even arise from a normal business practice. Now, because it arises from a normal business practice, I can still create a provision for the same. Okay, next statement, very important, very interesting, and very important for the questions that we are going to see. It should be noted that a provision should not be recognized. Underline the word should not be recognized. A provision should not be recognized if any future action is available through which the obligation can be avoided. अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि फ्यूचर में हम कुछ ऐसा करेंगे जिससे ये ऑब्लिगेशन अवॉइड हो सकता है तो आप प्रोविजन क्रिएट नहीं करेंगे. राइट, अंडरस्टैंड इट अगेन, देन आई विल गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. इट शुड बी नोटेड दैट अ प्रोविजन शुड नॉट बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड. हम प्रोविजन नहीं क्रिएट करेंगे. कब? जब हमको ऐसा लगता है कि फ्यूचर में हमारे कुछ करने से ये प्रोविजन अवॉइड हो जाएगा. टेक अ वेरी सिंपल एग्जांपल. Say for example, I have one asset which someone tells me 3 साल ही चलेगा, 3 साल के बाद वो नहीं चलेगा. Okay, let's not take a difficult example. I'll give you a simpler example. Someone tells me to overhaul my asset. What is the meaning of overhauling of an asset? So if you understand the aviation rules carefully, the aviation industry says कि हर 5 साल में एक बार आपका एयरक्राफ्ट पूरा ओवरहॉल करना पड़ेगा. क्या करना पड़ेगा? ओवरहॉल. What is the meaning of the word overhaul? Overhaul means पूरा एयरक्राफ्ट हम डिसमेंटल करेंगे. डिसमेंटल करके उसका छोटे से छोटा पार्ट चेक करेंगे कि उसमें कहीं रस्ट तो नहीं लगा, खराब तो नहीं हुआ. And then we will completely check if there is a need to replace that product, we will replace the product. So that is the meaning of the word overhaul. So when you overhaul an asset, you need a lot of expense because you need people to take care of the entire aircraft. मैंने ऐसा डिसाइड किया कि मैं ओवरहॉल करवाऊंगा, उसका 2-3 लाख रुपए खर्चा होगा. उससे अच्छा ये है 5 साल यूज कर लिया, मेरे पैसे रिकवर हो गए, अब ये एयरक्राफ्ट मैं फेंक देता हूँ और मैं नया एयरक्राफ्ट खरीद लेता हूँ. नाउ प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड, व्हेन आई डिसाइड टू रिप्लेस द एयरक्राफ्ट, do you agree with me? We will stop overhauling the aircraft. Of course, we will not overhaul the aircraft. Why will not overhaul the aircraft? Because in that case, we are going to replace the asset. Now, there is one action I am going to take in the future. Which action? That I will not overhaul the asset. I will replace the asset. I'll buy a new asset. This action of future will avoid creating a provision today. So if there is a future action with which a provision can be avoided, you will not create a provision in the books. Are you understanding? Example number 2. I run a popular restaurant in the city. My restaurant, of course, has a kitchen and the kitchen has a chimney. The government says every 2 years the entire chimney ka filter is to be checked. चिमनी का filter is to be replaced and नए filters are to be inserted. I decide, okay, I will do it. For the first 5 times, means 10 years, I do what government tells me. On the 12th year, when the government tells me again change the filters, I decide कि अब ये चिमनी कोई काम का नहीं है, हम 10 साल से यूज कर रहे हैं, ये चिमनी निकाल के हम नई चिमनी इंस्टॉल करेंगे. Which means there is a future action to replace the chimney, because of which the provision for changing the filter cost will be avoided. In this case, there is a future action because of which I am not going to spend any amount today. That means a provision is not to be recorded in the books of accounts. Now you will have one question, and the question is कि सर अगर एयरक्राफ्ट नया खरीदना है तो भी तो खर्चा होगा. You will have some expenditure if you are replacing the asset. Of course, we'll have to buy a new asset, and for that also you need some amount. Now that amount will be taken care of by the depreciation funds. You already have depreciation to take care of replacement of the asset. If you again create a provision, that means you are doing duplication for creating provisions in the books. So in that case, a provision is not required. In that case, you already have depreciation funds. Right? I hope you're understanding. Again, I'm repeating it for you. If there is any future action because of which today you can avoid a provision, you will avoid that provision. You will not record it in the books of accounts. Let's see what I've given in the example. Repair cost of a damaged machine can be avoided by purchasing a new machine. तो अगर आपको रिपेयर नहीं करवाना हो तो आप उसको फेंक दीजिए. आप सामने क्या खरीदोगे? न्यू मशीन. For purchasing a new machine, underline, depreciation fund can be used. Right? Okay. Let's quickly revise the first part, which is your provision. What is a provision? It is a liability which can be measured only by using a substantial degree of estimation. When can you record a provision? When all the three conditions are satisfied. First, there is a present obligation due to a past event. Second, it is probable. What is the meaning of the word probable? Probability of more than 50%, which means more likely than unlikely. An enterprise has a present obligation due to a past event. It is probable that there shall be outflow of resources, embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. And third, a reliable estimate can be made of the amount of obligation. It is not necessary that a provision will arise from a contractual obligation. A provision will always arise from it can also arise from your normal business practice. So as I give you the example, I have a normal business practice of giving depreciation. I have a normal business practice of giving bonus. Because I have a normal practice of giving bonus, I can still create a provision in the books. It says it is not necessary that a provision should be recognized only on having a legal or contractual obligation. It may even arise from a normal business practice. And the last point, if there is any future action from which you can avoid the provision, then you will not record the provision in the books. Fine. One last thing, then I have a doubt, we'll take that doubt. You should also have a question कि सर ऐसे तो फिर हम कोई प्रोविजन क्रिएट ही नहीं कर पाएंगे, क्योंकि सारे के सारे प्रोविजन में हमको कोई ना कोई फ्यूचर एक्शन मिल जाएगा. Say for example, someone tells me that after 2 years service your vehicle, and if you do not service your vehicle, you can always replace and buy a new vehicle. So for everything, you may think that you will have a future action because of which a provision today can be avoided, but that is not the case. There are many expenses for which you do not have any future course of action. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. The concept will be absolutely clear to you. I have a factory, and just besides my factory, there flows a river. Now, what I do is, whatever waste is generated in my factory, I straight away dispose it off in the river. Please understand, there is no rule today for contamination of the river that we have. After 2 years, suddenly government brings out a new rule कि जिसने भी river को pollute किया है, वो river को clean करके देगा. और ये mandatory rule है, सबको करना पड़ेगा. Now I ask myself, is there any action by which this provision can be avoided. There is no action by which this provision can be avoided. लैंड या रिवर ऑलरेडी कंटेमिनेट हो चुकी है, ऑलरेडी पोल्यूशन हो चुका है. अब मुझे सिर्फ क्या करना पड़ेगा, उसको क्लीन करना पड़ेगा. क्लीन मैं खुद तो नहीं करूंगा. आई विल नीड मेन हु विल गो एंड क्लीन इट, and I will have to pay to them, which means there will be outflow of resources. Because there will be outflow of resources, in that case, I will have to create a provision. There is no future action because of which I can avoid the provision. Are you understanding? So this is one example where you cannot avoid the provision. You do not have any future course of action to avoid the provision. You will have to record the provision in the books of accounts. Are you getting it? Okay. Now I have one question which says depreciation does not take care of inflation. So shouldn't we make a provision for the difference amount of inflation? Now the answer to this is no. Please understand, we are following GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting practices in India. Now, if you read GAAP, you will have to study Accounting Standard 10 for depreciation and AS 29 for provision. Both these standards do not allow inflation, which means you cannot take time value of money into factor. Now, as I have already explained to you about the Ind AS. This is one of the practical problems that the foreign investors found in the accounting standards. They told the accounting standard board that your accounting standards are not practical. Why are they not practical? Because they do not take care of the real life scenario. The real life scenario says that there will be inflation. Because there will be inflation, you cannot continue recording at the historical cost. The accounting standard board agreed with it, and then they decided to introduce something known as the Ind AS. And in the Ind AS, you take care of inflation. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. As depreciation will not take care of inflation, but please understand, we are studying generally accepted accounting practices in India. The gap does not take into account any kind of inflation. When you go to the final and you read Ind AS, of course, that will take care of inflation, and you will always include time value of money, right? So because you will include time value of money, you will automatically take care of inflation. As of now, please understand, your depreciation fund will never take care of any kind of inflation. Why? Because you're studying generally accepted accounting practices in India. Fine. Hope that solves your doubt. Okay, come to the next one, which is uses of provision. How can you use a provision? A provision should be utilized for the expense for which it has been created. So, a provision should be utilized only for the reason for which it has been created, which also means that your provision is a specific provision. It is not a general provision. It is a specific provision. जिसके लिए create किया है उसी के लिए use करना पड़ेगा. Second point, provision should be reviewed at the time of preparing each balance sheet and should be adjusted for changes, if any. And any such change would be a change in accounting estimate. This also we have seen. Now, because estimation का nature is that we are estimating, हम अंदाजा लगा रहे हैं. It may happen, it may happen to be the same, it may not happen to be the same. 99% of provision is never same. You decide that the useful life of an asset is 5 years, it will not exactly be 5 years. It will either be greater or it will be less. You decide that my bad debt reserve provision will be 3%. It's not confirmed that it will be 3%. It may be more, it may be less. So, as the nature of the provision is that it is uncertain, you always treat it as a change in accounting estimate because it is prone to change. And that is why you always give the effect prospectively and not retrospectively. A provision should be reviewed at each time for preparing the balance sheet and should be adjusted for changes, if any. And any such change would be a change in accounting estimate. Underline the word accounting estimate. And its effect should be given prospectively. Third point, if any provision is no longer required, it should be reversed. Underline the word reversed. So you first create a journal entry, profit and loss account debit to provision account. Then you will reverse the entry provision account debit to profit and loss account. Fourth point, Parth, your answer to your doubt. AS9 does not allow discounting of provision to its present value. So no discounting, no time value of money, no inflation is to be taken care of in the generally accepted accounting principles, which is AS29. Fine, that brings you to the end of the first part, which is your provision. Let's quickly revise this. Then we go to contingent liability. It says a provision is a liability which can be measured only with a substantial degree of estimation. A provision should be recognized only if all the three conditions are satisfied. First one, there is a present obligation due to a past event. It is probable. What is the meaning of probable? Probability of more than 50%. What is probable? That there shall be outflow of economic resources. हमारी organization से resources बाहर जाएंगे. Embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. And the third one, a reliable estimate can be made of the amount of provision. It is not necessary that a provision will always result from a legal or contractual obligation. It can also result from a normal business practice. And the last point, it should be noted that if there is any future action because of which the provision can be avoided, in that case, you will not record the provision. And if you're going to replace the asset, your depreciation fund will take care of replacement of the asset. No need to create any kind of duplication in that case. Uses of provision, there are four important points. First one, provision is always a specific provision. So it is to be utilized only for the expense for which it has been created. A provision should be reviewed at each time of preparing the balance sheet date. If there are any changes, they will be treated as a change in accounting estimate, and its effect should always be given prospectively. And the last one, AS29 will not allow any kind of discounting. And I missed the third point. If any provision is no longer required, you will have to reverse it. Fine. I hope you're understanding. I hope you're comfortable with my speed. Now we are done with the first part of this accounting standard, which is your provisions. I'll just wait for 2 minutes. Let's see if anyone has any doubts. So if you have any doubts, please put it in the chat box. Okay, there is one doubt which says, would the provision will be always for short term? So the first point says there should be a present obligation due to a past event. Now the answer to your question is, I'll give you two examples. If today I feel that after 5 years I have to create a provision, then there is no present obligation due to a past event, which means I cannot create a provision. I have to create a provision only if there is a present obligation. आज मेरे organization से resources बाहर जाने वाले हैं. Only then I can record a provision. So, would a provision always be short term? Not necessary. See, there is no short term, long term in a provision. You have to see, do you have to pay today? If you have to pay today, irrespective of whatever amount, you will have to create a provision in the books. There is no long term provision or short term provision. For long term and short term, you have something known as a reserve. So you have long term reserves, you keep reserves, you keep money aside. And remember, a reserve is always appropriation of profits. However, your provision is always a charge against the profit. Because you charge against the profit, you record it in the profit and loss account. However, a reserve is an appropriation of profit. आपके पास profit आ गया है, अब आप decide कर रहे हो कि हम लोग शेयर होल्डर्स को देने से पहले कुछ पैसे साइड में रखते हैं ताकि फ्यूचर में हमें कुछ लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स हो, हमें एक्सपांशन करना हो तो ये पैसे काम आएंगे. So you never have short term or long term provisions. Of course, you have short term or long term reserves. For provisions, you have to fulfill the three conditions. The first condition says there has to be a present obligation due to a past event. Right? I hope that solves your doubt. Okay, if anyone has any other doubts, I would like to wait for 2 minutes and solve those doubts first. Yes, of course, ESOP is a provision. The amount that you create over there for ESOP is a provision. Now understand what ESOP is. There is one accounting standard, accounting. Okay, by the way, I hope you all remember one thing, that if one concept is taken care of by one accounting standard, no other accounting standard will interfere in that case. Right? I hope everyone is absolutely clear with that. हमने ये बहुत पहले पढ़ लिया है कि अगर कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का रेवेन्यू AS7 दिखता है तो AS9 उस केस में इंटरफियर नहीं कर सकता. अगर कोई चीज के बारे में एक accounting standard is dealing with something, then no other accounting standard can interfere in this case. Now remember, there is one accounting standard known as AS15. AS15 deals with employee benefits. एम्प्लॉय बेनिफिट्स मीन्स आप एम्प्लॉय को क्या क्या बेनिफिट देते हो. एम्प्लॉय को हम दो टाइप के बेनिफिट देते हैं. ड्यूरिंग द एम्प्लॉयमेंट ही गेट्स बेनिफिट, post his employment also he gets benefit. So during his employment we give him salary, we give him bonus. Post his employment we give him pension. ES15 deals with employee benefits. Employee benefits में एक और चीज आती है which is ESOP. You also give ESOP to your employees. That is also an employee benefit. So ESOP is basically a guidance note to AS15, which means AS15 and its guidance note is taking care of ESOP. Now, because it is already being taken care of by AS15, AS29 cannot interfere in that case. So the answer to your question is yes, ESOP outstanding is, of course, your provision. So whatever ESOP liability you're creating is your provision. But AS29 cannot interfere in that case. Why? Because AS15 is already taking care of ESOP. However, you do not have AS15 in your syllabus. AS15 will be taken care of when you come to the final level. Right? So, Raj, I hope that solves your doubt as well. 8:48. I'll see you all at 8:55 again. Take a 5 minutes break. In the meantime, if you have any doubts, please post it. You still have 5 minutes. So go through the provisions again if you're absolutely clear. Because if you look at this standard, for the first 3 pages, you have concepts and then you have constantly all the questions. We have 11 questions in this accounting standard, and all 11 questions are relating to this concept. So just take 5 minutes. If you have any doubts, post it over here. I'll see you after 5 minutes, and please revise whatever we have studied in provisions so that if there is any confusion, I'll solve it right away. And only then we proceed to contingent liability and contingent assets. Okay, so I have two doubts over here. The first one says, when a provision is to be recorded at the time of past event or at the time of present obligation. So I think what you're trying to ask is, when do we record a provision? So you record a provision when you come to know that okay, today you will have to pay some amount. So that is the time when you will have to record a provision in the books. Now, why do you have to pay today is important, because in the past you would have made some amount, some kind of commitment that I will pay to you in the future. I'll give you a I'll give you another example. I think that will help you. If I want to borrow money from someone tells me that क्या guarantee है कि आप पैसे लौटाओगे, so I call a friend of mine and I tell him कि please ask him, he is a common friend between you and me, and in that case if I do not pay, he will pay the amount to you. Now he has already committed to the other person कि if this person does not pay, I will pay to you. The day I do not pay, he has to pay, means it is a provision for him. Why? Because he has to pay today because of a past event that he made a promise. So a provision is always recorded in the current period when you feel that you will have to pay the amount. Okay, I hope that solves your doubt. If it doesn't, please repost it, I'll solve it again. Another second doubt that I have is, suppose the liability is going to arise in the next accounting year and we can estimate it today. Should we recognize the provision for the same in the current year or in the next year? So I will ask you, in the current year, do you have a present obligation? Do you have to pay today? No, you do not have to pay today. So you will record it in the year in which you will have to pay, specifically on the at the time when you have to pay. So even if it is a provision to be paid in the next accounting year, you will record it in the year in which the liability is to be paid, which means you in the year in which you have a present obligation. So the answer to your question is, it will be recorded in the next year, because the question that you have asked, in that the liability is going to arise in the next year, so you will record it in the next year, right? And third question is ESOP outstanding shown under reserves and surplus? Yes, it is shown under the head reserves and surplus. Reserves and surplus, no, I think it is shown under your liabilities, so it is not under reserves and surplus. ESOP is not your reserve, so I'm sorry, ESOP outstanding will not be a reserve or surplus. That is not the place where it will be recorded. Fine, I hope that solves your doubt. Since there are no more doubts, I also presume that you have understood the first part of the accounting standard. Fine, come to the next part, which is contingent liability. Okay, one more question. Uh, we, we will make a depreciation fund in the year we wanted to buy the asset or replace the asset. Now, please understand, depreciation is recorded after the end of every year. So every year you create a depreciation fund, which means every year you enter an entry for depreciation. For example, I buy an asset today of 10 lakhs. Its useful life is 10 years, which means my depreciation per annum is 1 lakh. Every year I have to create a depreciation of 1 lakh, so that when at the time of replacing the asset, I do not have to disturb my cash flow. What I will do is I will straight away record it in, I will straight away use the funds that I have in the form of depreciation fund. So the answer to your question is that depreciation fund should be recorded constantly. Every year you record depreciation. There is no such thing that depreciation will be in the year in which you want to buy or replace the asset. That is not when, that is the time. See, when you want to buy or replace the asset, that is when I'm writing over here, you will use the depreciation fund. You will use the depreciation fund when you want to buy or replace the asset, but you will make provision for depreciation every year. So on every balance sheet date, you will look at the WDV of the asset and you will create a provision in the books. Are you understanding? Okay, let's proceed further to contingent liabilities. It says it is a possible obligation. Underline the word possible obligation. Possible matlab हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता है. That is the meaning of possible obligation, that arises from a past event, but the existence of which will be confirmed on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain event not wholly within the control of the enterprise. Right, let's break this into parts so that you can easily remember it and you can even understand it. As the word contingency says, hoga ya nahi hoga pata nahi, you're not sure. So it is what? A possible obligation. Underline the word possible obligation. A contingent liability is a possible obligation. Put a slash after possible obligation. It arises from a past event. Underline the word past event. But the existence of which will be confirmed. Put a slash after confirmed. What is contingent liability? It is a possible obligation which arises from a past event, but the existence of which will be confirmed. How will it be confirmed? On occurrence or non-occurrence, both. बीच में क्या लिखा हुआ है? और मतलब occurrence भी चलेगा और non-occurrence भी चलेगा. On occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain event, put a slash after uncertain event, not wholly within the control of the enterprise. Okay, I'll give you a very simple example. By, say, for example, in a ship, some material is going to come at from, say, for example, USA to India. I have ordered some material which is going to come by waterways, means it is going to come by a ship. Now, I am afraid that the ship will sink, and if the ship will sink, my product will be damaged. Which means, is it compulsory that the ship will sink? No. This is a contingency. It may sink, it may not sink. So what I do is I safely create a contingent liability. And I recorded in the notes कि हमारा एक consignment आने वाला है. वो consignment में अगर ship डूब जाती है तो हमारा नुकसान होगा. Now, which means ship डूबेगी तो नुकसान होगा. Which means on occurrence of the event of ship sinking, if it does not rain this year, I will have loss. On non-occurrence of rain, I will have loss. So please understand, a contingent liability can be on occurrence or non-occurrence both. If there is occurrence of loss, if there is occurrence of an event, I will have a loss. If there is non-occurrence of an event, then also I can have a loss. For example, if there is non-occurrence of rain, I will have loss. If there is an occurrence of an event of a ship sinking, again I will have a loss. Which means a contingent liability is a possible asset, not a sure shot liability. A contingent liability is a possible obligation, not a sure shot obligation. A possible obligation which will arise out of a past event, but the outcome will be ascertained on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain event. Very important. Not wholly within the control of the enterprise. Is sinking of the ship in control of the enterprise? No, I am sitting over here. The ship is somewhere in the sea. It is out of my control. Is rainfall in my control? Not at all. Rainfall is also not in my control. So these occurrence or non-occurrence is not wholly within the control of the enterprise. Only then you call it as a contingent liability. Look at the next statement, which we have already seen earlier. If probability of outflow of resources is 50% or less, underline the word 50% or less, then it gives rise to contingent liability, which means if occurrence is 40% contingent liability, if occurrence is 50% contingent liability, if occurrence is 55%, then it is a provision. So you will create a provision when the probability is more than 50%. If it is 50%, you will record it as a contingent liability. Where do you record contingent liability? Contingent liability should be disclosed in the notes to accounts in the balance sheet. So contingent liability will always be recorded in the notes to accounts. It will not form part of your profit and loss account. However, a provision will always form part of your profit and loss account. However, last point, if probability of outflow of resources is extremely remote, अगर आपको लगता है कि हम पे ये प्रॉब्लम आएगी लेकिन उसके चांसेस 0.01% है, it is extremely remote, then even disclosures are not required. So in this case, you need not even provide the disclosure of contingent liabilities in the books. Fine, I'm again repeating the entire thing for you. Contingent liability means a possible obligation which arises because of a past event, the outcome of which will be ascertained on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain event not wholly within the control of the enterprise. If the probability of outflow of resources is less than 50%, or it is 50%, then you will create a contingent liability. Where do you record contingent liabilities? You record it in the notes to accounts in the balance after the balance sheet. And if the probability of outflow of resources is extremely remote, means extremely less chances are there, in that case even disclosure in books of accounts is not required. Fine, okay, I have one doubt. Let's see. So it says if we have a secured risk by insurance, then also we show it as a contingent liability. Of course, yes, you will still continue showing it as a contingent liability in the notes to account. So please remember, provision, contingent liability, these two have never said कि अगर आपके पास insurance cover हो या risk mitigation tool हो. What is insurance? It is a risk mitigation tool. Mitigation means reduction. Insurance is a tool with which you can reduce your risk. So AS29 never says कि अगर risk mitigation tool मतलब insurance है तो provision नहीं करना है. हाँ, वो ऐसा कहता है कि अगर आपके पास कोई ऐसा एक्शन है which you will take in the future because of which the provision can be avoided, then do not create a provision. So the answer to your question is you will still have to record it as a contingent liability. Right? I hope that solves your doubt. Come to the last part of the standard, which is contingent asset. Again, the definition is exactly same as you have of contingent liability. Look what contingent asset says. It is a possible asset which arises from a past event. It is what? A possible asset. पीछे देखो क्या था? It was a possible obligation. Right now it is a possible asset which arises from a past event, but the existence of which shall be confirmed on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain events not wholly within the control of the enterprise. A contingent asset is neither to be recorded in the books nor it is to be disclosed in the notes to account. Are you understanding? Right. See, there is only one fundamental difference between contingent asset and contingent liability. In contingent liability, they say it is a possible obligation. Piche, they say it is a possible asset. You will never record a contingent asset, but you will record a contingent liability where? In the notes to accounts. Are you getting it? That brings you to the end of the second part. Now comes the third part and an interesting part in Accounting Standard 29, which is your other aspects of AS 29. Before we go to the other aspects of AS 29, I'll quickly revise whatever we have done till now. Then we go to the other aspects and then we hit some of the theory questions that you have. We are doing with standard AS 29, which is provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent asset. The first statement says that provision is nothing but a liability which can be measured only by using a substantial degree of estimation. It says that a provision should be recognized only when any of one of sorry in all of the three conditions are satisfied. Sorry, I made a mistake. A provision should be recognized when all the three conditions are satisfied. First, there is a present obligation due to a past event. It is probable that there shall be outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligation. अगर आपकी resources आपकी organization से there will be outflow of resources and the probability is more than 50%, then you will record it as a provision. Means you will record it in the profit and loss account. It is not necessary that a provision should result out of legal or contractual obligation. It can even result out of a normal business practice. And the most important point, if you have any future course of action because of which you can avoid the provision today, do not create a provision in the books. Then we saw uses of provision. A provision is always a specific a change in accounting estimate and its effect will be given prospectively. If a provision is no longer required, you will reverse the provision. And time value of money, discounting of provision is not allowed as per Accounting Standard 29. Then we saw contingent liability, which says it is a possible obligation which arises because of a past event, but the outcome of which will rely on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain event not wholly within the control of the enterprise. A contingent liability will be recorded when the probability of occurrence is 50% or less. You will record it in the notes to accounts. However, if the likelihood of its occurrence is very remote, you will not even record it in the notes to accounts. Then you have contingent assets, which is a possible asset which the outcome of which will be as certain on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future uncertain events, not wholly within the control of the enterprise. Since it is a possible asset and we follow the prudence concept, you will never record contingent assets in the books. अगर आपका बहुत मन कर रहा हो तो आप कहाँ रिकॉर्ड करोगे? You can disclose it in the director's report. Fine, that brings you to the end of the first two parts of Accounting Standard 29. Now we go to the other aspects. You have four very interesting cases that we will discuss about the other aspects of AS 29. Before that, I can see one doubt which says, is there any specific authority to calculate probability, or else the owner can still manipulate it? So the answer to your question is there is no authority to calculate what provision you have created. You have someone known as auditors. So the auditors, when they conduct the audit, they will definitely verify whatever provisions that you are creating in the books of accounts. Now, one more thing, since you have asked this doubt, I would like to tell you one small thing as well regarding to this. Every person who is preparing books of accounts has to follow accounting standards. So if you're preparing books of accounts, you have to follow accounting standard 29. If you do not follow accounting standards, it is said that your books of accounts are not giving a true and fair view. Similarly, when an audit is conducted, a chartered accountant has to follow SA, which is known as Standards on Auditing. These standards of auditing tell the auditor how to conduct the audit. In them, one of the aspects is that whatever provision has been created by the management, the auditor will check the reasonability of the same. How reasonable is a provision that has been created? What is the basis on which the provision has been created? These important aspects, there is no authority. There is only one person who will check this, and that is the auditor. So the answer to your question is there is no specific authority. The auditor, when he or she conducts the audit, will verify whether the provision has been created with reasonableness or not. Right? I will also explain this to you when we do standards on auditing later after some days. But yes, the auditor will take care of all this about the reasonability. Fine, I hope that solves your doubt, Parth. Let's go ahead with the other aspects of AS 29. I can see four aspects of AS 29. Now, first, I'll give you an example, and then we read whatever is given. Please pay attention, all 4 points, very important for exam. You have questions behind based on these four things. Look at the first one. Enterprise has joint and several liability. Now, I'm sure you would have studied the word joint and several when you study the Indian Contract Act 1872. There you have joint and several liability. Now, what is the meaning of joint and several liability? अगर चार लोग की बात करते हैं तो चार लोग की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी या लायबिलिटी अक्यूमुलेटेड जॉइंट भी है और सबकी इंडिविजुअल लायबिलिटी भी है, which means they have joint and several liability. What happens in joint and several liability? If out of 4 people one does not pay, तो इसके हिस्से का these 3 people will pay. That is the meaning of joint and several liability. Are you understanding? First, understand the meaning of the heading and then I'll explain the concept to you. It says, situation 1 says, enterprise के पास क्या है? Joint and several liability है. Which means, अगर 5 लोग की बात करते हैं, पांचों की अपनी अपनी लायबिलिटी है. अगर एक बंदा पे नहीं करता तो इसकी लायबिलिटी का हिस्सा कौन पे करेगा? ये 4 लोग मिलके पे करेंगे. अगर ये 2 लोग नहीं पे करते तो इनकी हिस्से का लायबिलिटी कौन पे करेगा? ये 3 लोग पे करेंगे. Now let's take an example. There is one area recognized as a special economic zone. Say for example, there is one area which is known as a special economic zone. Government ने एक एरिया बना के दिया है और selected 10 यूनिट्स वहां पे ऑपरेट करते हैं. Selected 10 यूनिट्स ऑपरेट ओवर देयर. The who has created this area? The government has created this area known as a special economic zone. In the special economic zone, there are 10 units that are operating. Government has said that every year one unit will pay 10,000 rupees. राइट, एक यूनिट कितना पे करेगा? 10,000 रुपए पे करेगा। क्यों? क्योंकि उनको स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक जोन में रहना है। अगर रहना है तो कितना पे करना पड़ेगा? 10,000 रुपीज पे करना पड़ेगा, which means that the government will collect 10,000 multiplied by 10, 1 lakh rupees at the end of 1 year from the 10 units. Now, which means अगर 10 में से एक यूनिट भी पे नहीं करेगा तो उस एक यूनिट के हिस्से का बाकी के 9 यूनिट पे करेंगे. दिस इज द मीनिंग ऑफ joint and several liability. Now, what will happen in this case? There are two words that you will have to understand. One is a direct liability and the other is indirect liability. If so, are you 100% sure you will have to pay 10,000? Yes, वो तो हमारी liability है. हमने agree किया है कि हर साल हम लोग 10,000 भरेंगे और 10,000 सॉरी 10,000 भरेंगे और ये हमारी direct liability है. दूसरे नहीं भरते वो तो हमारी additional liability है, indirect liability है. Direct हमको कितना पे करना है? 10,000. 10,000 पे करना पड़ेगा. इसकी probability कितनी है? 100% probability. Is 100% more than 50%? Yes. So 10,000 rupees is my provision. Are you understanding? The part of the liability that the enterprise has to meet directly, 10,000 rupees is my provision. क्योंकि वो मेरे हिस्से की liability है, मुझे पे करना ही है. मान लो वर्स्ट कम वर्स्ट केस में बाकी के 9 लोग नहीं पे करेंगे तो मुझे अपनी लायबिलिटी के अलावा कितना पे करना पड़ेगा? 90,000. क्या 100% श्योर है कि 9 के 9 लोग पे नहीं करेंगे? जरूरी नहीं है, हो सकता है सारे 9 पे करें, हो सकता है एक ही ना पे करे. बट इन वर्स्ट केस सिनेरियो, इफ ऑल द 9 डू नॉट पे, व्हाट विल बी माय इनडायरेक्ट लायबिलिटी? 90,000. दिस 90,000 की प्रोबेबिलिटी कितनी है? लेस देन 50%. दैट इज व्हाई इट इज नोन एज contingent liability. Are you understanding? Right, please understand. I'm repeating the entire thing. You can look at the chat history to understand the case that I have created. We have one special economic zone in which there are 10 units. Who set up this 10 unit? Sorry, who set up this special economic zone? The government. The government said ये special economic zone है, इसमें 10 यूनिट ऑपरेट करेंगे. एक यूनिट से हम इधर ऑपरेट करने के कितने पैसे लेंगे? 10,000. 10 लोग से कितने लेंगे? 1 लाख रुपए. और किस टाइप की लायबिलिटी है? जॉइंट एंड सेवरल लायबिलिटी. हर एक की डायरेक्ट लायबिलिटी कितनी है? 10,000 रुपीज. लेकिन मान लो बाकी के 9 लोग पे नहीं करते हो. In that case, you will have to, the one unit will have to pay the liability of the remaining 9 units also. The liability that is to be met directly by me is 10,000 rupees. That what is the probability of its occurrence? 100%. I will create a provision in the books. For the remaining 9, I am not sure. I may have to pay. I may not have to pay. That is why for the remaining 90,000, which is my indirect liability, that is my contingent liability. Are you understanding? Okay, see what they have given. And then we take your doubts if you have any. If for any obligation, the enterprise is jointly and severally liable, then provision for that part of obligation should be recognized, underlined, which is to be met by the enterprise directly. So, whatever is to be met by the enterprise directly, that is something we will record as a provision. The portion of obligation which is to be met by the other enterprises is your underlying contingent liability, and that is to be disclosed in the notes to accounts. Fine, exactly what I have explained to you. If you still have any doubts, if you have not understood, if you feel that I need to repeat any concept, please put it in the chat box. I'll quickly have a look at it and I'll explain it again, or I'll solve your doubts. Right, that brings you to the end of the first part, which is enterprise is jointly and severally liable. So if there is a joint and several liability, whatever obligation is to be met directly by the enterprise, that will be recorded as a provision. For the liability of the other enterprises that I may have to pay, that is my contingent liability to be recorded in the notes to accounts. Fine, come to the next part, which says enactment of new legislation is virtually certain. Underline the word virtually certain. Virtually certain means 100% probability. Underline the word 100% probability. क्या लिखा है उन लोगों ने? Enactment of new legislation, नया लॉ आएगा, इसकी प्रोबेबिलिटी कितनी है? Virtually certain है, मतलब कितनी प्रोबेबिलिटी है? 100% प्रोबेबिलिटी. Now please understand this case properly. Let's take the same example I took earlier regarding contamination of water. Let's change it. Let's keep it contamination of land. There is one land just opposite to my factory. I put all the chemicals on that land. I literally throw all the chemicals on that land, because of which that land has completely become barren and then that land has become polluted. आज तक कोई लॉ नहीं था उस पे. अब सडनली गवर्नमेंट ने एक नया लॉ दिया है कि जिसने भी आज तक लैंड को, is it 100% sure that the law will be enacted? Yes. Is the enactment of new law making me pay some money? Means, is there outflow of resources? Again, yes. So there has to be answer as yes to three questions. First, is there a new law? Yes. Is it virtually certain? Means 100% certain? Yes. Is there going to be outflow of resources? Yes. If the answer to all these three questions is yes, then you will have to create a provision because of enactment of a new law. Are you understanding? Example number 2, which will give you more clarity. You and I both are doing domestic sales. You and I are doing what? Domestic sales. What is the meaning of domestic sales? We sell locally. We do not export. Please understand, we sell locally. Government made a new law कि आज से जो भी एक्सपोर्ट करता है उसको 10% ड्यूटी पे करना पड़ेगा. राइट? व्हाट्स द न्यू लॉ? 10% ड्यूटी ऑन एक्सपोर्ट. आज तक नहीं था, आज तक 0% था. अब कितना हो गया? 10% हो गया. Let's understand this case. Is there a new law? Yes. Is the enactment of new law virtually certain? Yes. Do I have to pay something? No. No need to pay anything. I do not do exports. Because I do not do export, I have no liability on me. Which clearly means that enactment of new law, if it is virtually certain and it results in outflow of resources from the enterprise, you will have to create a provision in the books. Are you understanding? Why did I directly use the word provision? Why did I not use the word contingent liability? Because they say virtually certain. Virtually certain means 100% sure. Because we are 100% sure, the probability is more than 50%, we will definitely record a provision in the books. Are you understanding? I hope this is absolutely clear. Come to the second point, which says, if at the time of preparation of balance sheet, it is virtually certain that a new legislation will be enacted resulting in an obligation for the enterprise, then provision for such obligation should be recognized. So you will create a provision for such obligation. Fine, that brings you to the end of the first 2 points. First one is enterprise is jointly and severally liable. Whatever is your direct liability, you will create a provision. For the other organizations, the indirect liability will be your contingent liability. The next part says enactment of new legislation is virtually certain, which means if you're 100% sure that you will have outflow of resources because of the new law, you will record a provision in the books. There should be 3 questions, the answer to which should be yes. Question number 1, will there be a new law? Yes. Will it be virtually certain? Yes. And third, will it result in outflow of resources? Yes. Then you will create a provision. Come to the third point, very interesting point. Reimbursement is expected. Put a slash after expected. Reimbursement is expected for an expenditure for which, very important, highlight or underline it, provision has already been recognized. Right? Let's understand this with the help of a case. I'll prepare a case for you. Pay attention. If you don't understand, please ask me. There are two partners, A and B. What do these two partners do? A and B, one person manufactures, the other person assembles. यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग? कितनी पार्टी है? दो पार्टी है, ए और बी। ए क्या करता है? प्रोडक्ट को मैन्युफैक्चर करता है और अलग अलग टुकड़ों में बी को देता है। बी क्या करता है? टुकड़ों को असेंबल करता है। असेंबल करने के बाद बी कस्टमर को बेच देता है। सो आई एम राइटिंग ओवर हियर, बी सेल्स टू द कस्टमर। नाउ फ्रॉम whom have the customer purchased? B. If there is any problem in the product, to whom will the customers come? B, because they purchased from B. They do not know who A is, but A and B are partners. Again, A and B are partners. A manufactures, B assembles. After assembling, B is selling to the ultimate customer. The customer purchases it, the product is under warranty. If there is any problem, the customer will bring back the product to B and tell him केस को बदल के दो। जैसे ही B के पास प्रोडक्ट आएगा, B will replace the product. And then A and B will decide, looking at the product, कि fault कहाँ है, right? A and B will look at the product after replacing